In partnership with the Consulate General of the Southwest of Israel in Southwest America, the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston welcomes you all to this exclusive discussion with an international NGO all the way from the Middle East, Sharaka. Opening the doors to a new era of friendship and cooperation, the Abraham Accords, established in 2020, was created to help normalize relations between Israel and the Arab world. Seeking to strengthen bonds between Israel and its neighbors, Sharaka was created and aims to position itself as a preeminent organization promoting peace and normalization on people-to-people level, especially amongst the younger generation. I'll certainly leave more of Sharaka to our guests here to explain, but before we do, a couple of announcements. Please join the Global Young Professionals as we embark on a new season filled with networking and opportunities for young professionals to collaborate and meet with globally focused individuals. Sign up for the YP newsletter at wachhouston.org or ask anyone from the program committee. We do have a few members here from our Young Professionals Program Committee. Feel free to raise your hands if you're here. Thank you all. They're all part of our organization, and if you have any questions going forward and how to be involved with the young professionals, please feel free to ask any of them. A couple of upcoming events that we do have. On April 14th, we host former CIO Director Stephen Hadley for a luncheon at Del Frisco's. On 4/19th, we host President of the Council of Foreign Relations, Dr. Richard Haas at the Junior League. And lastly, we have at the end of April, Yon Grillo, a highly engaging and sought-after expert who will speak on crime, drug cartels, Mexico-U.S. relations. He'll be here 2 days at the Woodlands on April 25th and here in Houston on April 26th. All these programs and more can be found at wachhouston.org. And now for our guests. I want to stand aside here to block them, but first to me, on my right here is Mr. Dan Pfefferman. He is the Executive Director of Sharaka. Dan Pfefferman is an Israeli author, speaker, researcher, and thought leader who focuses on Israel, the Jewish world, and the Middle East. He is a fellow at the prestigious Jewish People Policy Institute and publishes and speaks regularly in Israel and around the world. He is also the co-host of the popular Jewinst podcast. Dan served for nearly a decade as a policy advisor and foreign affairs analyst to the Israeli Defense Forces General Staff. He holds advanced degrees in national security studies, international politics, and Middle Eastern studies, and he'll also be the moderator for today's program. Next would be, the third round would be Dr. Ahmed Al-Khuzai, Government and International Affairs Director, based in Bahrain. Khuzai is a Bahraini political consultant and was managing partner of the DC-based political consultancy firm Khuzai Associates LLC. Ahmed is a cross-country expert, has cross-country experience ranging from managing regional marketing campaigns with international names such as HSBC Bank. Ahmed received his PhD from the University of Osaka in Japan and attended academic programs in Scotland and Germany. He published the Book of Management, Contractum Trinitas, the Political Campaign Planning Manual, and Kingdom of Bahrain Political Review. Third, we have at the end here, we have Ms. Fatana Al-Harbi, the Gulf Affairs Director. Al-Harbi is a Bahraini author of 5 works of fiction that discuss the life of women in Bahrain. She is a peace advocate, an athletics champion, and the first Bahraini youth to visit Israel after the Abraham Accords signing. She has experience in the fields of management and governance and holds an MBA in international management and bachelor's degree majoring in business, politics, and government studies from the Griffith University in Australia. Last but not least, we have Youssef El Azari, the Morocco Affairs Director. Youssef is a Moroccan marketing and advertising entrepreneur who is passionate about tech and education and peace building, especially after visiting Israel in May of 2022. He is the founder of Firiha, a nonprofit project that works to prevent girls from dropping out of school in Africa. Youssef is also a member of the World Economic Forum Global Shapers Program. He holds a master's degree in marketing and is fluent in Arabic, French, and English. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest for today from Sharaka. Dan, please take it away.
Thank you so much. We're really honored to be here. We've had a couple talks with these kinds of world councils, I guess, around the country, and I think it's really great forum that we appreciate engaging with. And thank you to our hosts at the Israeli Consulate. We appreciate helping arrange this, and to you guys for bringing everyone together and taking time out of your busy days to be here. Sharaka means partnership in Arabic. And it's a very unique concept in the world of the Middle East. This is kind of an engaged and worldly crowd, but what's kind of the first associations when people say Middle East that come to people's minds?
Yeah, oil and conflict.
Oil and conflict, yeah. So we hope that through our work and what's happening now in the next few years, that people start associating peace and cooperation, and that one day, we'll talk about the Middle East like people today talk about Europe. When the countries of Europe, just within the lifetimes of our grandparents, were all in conflict with each other, and today nobody bats an eye, Russia and Ukraine aside, talking about it. That is our vision. We came together, non-governmental, social entrepreneurs, regular people who wanted to see a different region. We learned from the missed opportunities of the peace agreements between Israel and Egypt signed in 1979 and Egypt and Jordan signed in 1994 that unfortunately remained solely on the government-to-government level. And while we're very fortunate for that because they stopped actual wars and bloodshed, they never were extended to the people-to-people level. So today, you cannot, if you're an Egyptian or Jordanian, whether legally or socially, you cannot have people-to-people engagement with Israeli colleagues outside of maybe niche academic conferences or some business deals. And it's a shame, because they're our neighbors. I live in Israel. The organization was founded by Israelis, Emiratis, Bahrainis, and now we're very fortunate to have a very, very quickly growing Moroccan component. And we're unique in that we're co-led, co-organized, co-strategized by peoples from all of these countries and now beyond. People from literally all over the Middle East and all over the broader Muslim world who want to engage in this new vision, who want a new narrative, a new script for what the Middle East and North Africa is and could be. And that's what we're about. Before we introduce ourselves, maybe we'll show a quick kind of little highlight video that we put together. I hope it's the right one.
Yes, Fatima, I trust you.
It's a video of yesterday.
Trust me. Brave people who decided to stand up and want a better future. Promoting peace, we're promoting a new and positive narrative in the Middle East and trying to turn the Middle East into a place of tolerance and a place of unity, and like our namesake Sharaka, a place of partnership.
The Abraham Accords has changed the region and changed my whole life. I today advocate for the new region that we live in today. The message of peace that our leadership in Bahrain believes in and I believe in.
If Sharaka in 5 to 10 years exists in every Arab country, that's a major regional change. This is just the beginning.
I know that this is a start of a beautiful conversation, of a beautiful exchange of ideas, but we need to grow this.
Let's start a little bit quickly. We've been introduced as far as our bios, but how did we get involved in this? And then we'll kind of throw into that question for the sake of time. When you first went to Israel, or in my case, went to the Arab world, what was the first thing that jumped out to you? You want to start with Fatima?
How did I get into it? It was all curiosity. It was still COVID time. Nobody could travel anywhere. We had restriction even going from Bahrain to Saudi, which is 20 minutes drive. One of my friends called me and she's like, do you want to go to Israel? I was like, this is so random, middle of COVID, no one is traveling, and you tell me go to Israel? I was like, yeah, for sure. I was curious. I've heard about Israel my whole life, but it was always the bad stuff. It was the things that the media fed us through CNN or Al Jazeera, or even through the society, the things that people talk about. So I wanted to go and see it by my own eyes, and I'm thankful I did, because I saw a different reality of Israel that I heard about. The moment we landed in Israel, we went to Tel Aviv street. I was wearing my headscarf. They could notice that we're not from there. So immediately, a complete strangers stop us in the street and ask us, are you from Dubai or Bahrain? So they knew that we're coming, like the people that we just had the agreement, the Abrahamic Accords. So they knew this is the new relationship, this is the new narrative happening. So I immediately say, Bahrain, they're like, we've been waiting for this for a long time, having peace with our neighbors. It was an overwhelming experience for me. I was happy to be the first Bahraini non-official to go and visit Israel. People were so welcoming, complete strangers inviting us to their homes. I met people, Jewish people, Muslims, Druze, Christians. I got to go to Al-Aqsa, to the Western Wall, to the church there. I get to experience the whole community, the Israeli community. And I took this to my social media platforms. I have a couple of thousand followers. I shared the reality that I saw. People didn't like it. They started attacking me, sending death threats, trying to hack my accounts to silence me. And they're saying, I'm not a Muslim, I'm not an Arab, I shouldn't be doing this. They said all sorts of stuff like, I'm part of a PR campaign for Israel, and I'm paid millions of dollars. And I keep telling them, believe me, I don't have millions of dollars in my bank account. But this was the start. I found myself advocating for peace, and now I work with Sharaka full time.
I got in for the food, actually. Well, during the same time, it was during COVID, I was invited to attend the inauguration of the Friedman Peace Institute in Jerusalem. We didn't have the setup of the embassy in Bahrain yet. Of course, it was COVID, nobody was getting in and out of Israel. Through a friend of a friend, I got introduced to Dan, and he told me about the first delegation that's coming to Israel. I agreed, but I had tendencies to run for public office in Bahrain at the time. So that would kill my ambition. So he agreed to adopt me without announcing anything. And I went there, I gave them a hard time, but the night before traveling, I called him like maybe 20 times, just checking on what can I get with me, what I can't. The biggest reason was my camera with the big lens. He's like, yeah, you can have it. Then I call again. Are you sure? He said, what are you talking about? You bugged me. And I said, can I have a camera inside Israel and I can take photos publicly? He's like, yeah, what are you talking about? So now I'll take you back to the narrative I grew up with, that Israel is a nation of scared people who live in bunkers and in a constant state of war. I mean, boy, was I wrong when I saw Tel Aviv.
You didn't want to leave.
No, I did, eventually. It's not what we imagined. It's not what we pictured. I mean, the most important thing that still keeps ringing in my head was the image of the trilingual street signs. It's in Hebrew, Arabic, and then English. It does not match the narrative I grew up learning that Israel is an apartheid state. Why would you include the Arabic? It created this debate in my head. And while thinking about it, I positively gained 10 pounds over that week. I mean, we went everywhere, met all sorts of people, Arabs, Jews, Druze, Bedouins. And the curious person that I am, I was asking them all sorts of questions. And I always anticipated Dan to barge in and say, no, don't talk to them or don't ask these questions. It's a free country, you can do whatever you want. That changed the whole narrative and made me somehow take some time off from my office and then join Sharaka on this mission to change the narrative of the Middle East, to cool down this hot zone that we have of conflicts and wars in the Middle East, and maybe change a little bit of what we could.
So, hi everyone. I've never dreamed of myself being here talking in with among several inspiring people and talking especially about diplomacy and people to people. And I could have dreamed to be a farmer, a janitor, or whatever, but never like to be here because it's I never thought about it, to be honest. It all started with my first visit to Israel, and I had some expectations. I wouldn't say stereotypes, but expectations in a sense that, it's still like in the Middle East, and I've heard that it's a developed country and things like that. And of course, when you come from an Arab country and it's full of the propaganda that is trying to polarize the public opinion about what's right and what's bad, and especially it makes it feel like a cartoon when there is a protagonist and antagonist, and here is the enemy, here is the hero. And I went there, and first, like once I landed in Tel Aviv, there was this Arab doctor, an Israeli, who wanted to do like a PCR to me with her scarf, things like that. I was like, oh, did I land in the wrong place, or what's that? Is it Israel? Yeah, this is Ben Gurion, Tel Aviv. And I felt very weird, and in the same time, I was like, okay. Then we go out and we went to the hotel, and then I had this journalist friend next to me. I was like, Afichai, who's gonna kick who? Like, I mean, I've never felt that stupid, to be honest. Like, because coming from a background where we were full of bullshit and propaganda from Nilesat and news outlets, things like that, I've never thought in my life that I will be loved by someone I expected to hate. And it was very, very weird. Like, I've met people from Israel, once they know that I am from Morocco, they hugged me for no reason. And they are like people, they tell me that my grandfather is from Marrakesh, my grandma is from Casablanca, things like that. And this is some love that I've never felt before. And I felt welcomed in a way that I was like, something is very weird here. So doing this transition, this conversion for me to be here, I think it's somehow similar to this Canadian family. I don't know if I don't know if all of you know this Hurricane Carter story, where this Canadian family, they adopted a kid, and he took the book of Hurricane Carter, who was in prison falsely, of course, and then he got his family involved to make him innocent because he believed he was innocent. And then after that, this family had a lot of trouble with the police officers, and because they were like, no, this case is closed. And then in a particular moment when things got heated up, the family was like, you know what, let's forget about that. That's not our problem. I'm very sorry. Like, we wanted to help you and to make him innocent and everything, but. And then the father said something. You can find this in the movie, and I think this is what really inspired me the most. And he was like, you know what, we reached a certain level that there is no going back, just for one reason, which is that now we know. Like, we know he is innocent, so we cannot go back or pretend that we don't know. And I think this is how I felt when I went to Israel and I came back to Morocco. It's the fact that I know, and I cannot unlearn it. I cannot say that I didn't say anything, or like there is a part of reality there that needs to be spread. So yeah, I kept sharing that story until I'm sharing it now in Texas. So yeah, feel free to ask us whatever you want.
I'll share from my perspective. You heard my background. You know, I'm supposedly a Middle East expert. At least that's what I did for a living for a long time. And yet, because of the politics until 3 years ago, we Israelis can't just go and travel around the region. And you know, the news in Israel, while I think it's fairly accurate in its portrayal of events, every news has its bias and its point of view. And so what you're going to see on the Israeli news is you're going to see conflict. When I was in the military for a long time, you know, you see the enemies of Israel, you see the extremists, you see the threats. But I can tell you there's a general mood in Israeli society, partly because we're in the Middle East, but we feel cut off from it. Partly because more than half of Israelis trace their immediate family backgrounds to the region. My family's from Iraq originally. And we feel cut off. So there's like this sense of wanting to feel like we're a part of the region that we're in. When there were rumors that something was happening in the diplomatic sphere, I was part of a small group of Israeli kind of influencers and writers, and you know that started connecting with people from the Gulf. And this was during COVID, so everything was on Zoom, and we had this WhatsApp group that's now it's a few hundred people. At the time, it was 50 people, half and half. It was always half and half, and we were chatting like an online dating thing, like just wanting to get to know each other for so long because we couldn't until recently. It was just not necessarily illegal, but it was just frowned upon, and nobody saw the reason why. And I was Zooming, I was making friends, contacts, having these like long, ongoing discussions. I used my podcast platform to have these conversations for other Israelis and for people around the world to get to know our new Emirati friends or our new Bahraini friends. And I took advantage using my American passport. I have an American passport, and I got to the UAE before all my Israeli friends. And I got to meet all these people and so many more. I had literally a week of, I don't care about tour sites, I care about people. And I had a week of just nonstop deep conversations with people from the UAE, from Saudi Arabia, Palestinians, Syrians, Lebanese, Moroccans, Pakistanis. And I was blown away that everything that we were not necessarily taught, but kind of led to believe in Israeli society about a monolithic Arab world or Muslim world, or that we're not going to be accepted, or that everyone's an extremist, literally melted away. I mean, Ahmed talked about seeing the road signs. The first thing I noticed when I got to the UAE, besides everyone in the traditional, you know, robes, which is kind of a shock, like a really cool shock thing, was the car advertisement billboards of women driving, some with headscarves, some without. I was like, oh, that's not what we're, you know, led to believe in kind of popular media. Okay, women driving with men, women driving without men, secular-looking women, religious-looking women. Okay, and then I start making friends with men, with women. Wait a minute, a woman CEO, a woman professor, a woman journalist. I started meeting, you know, Jews and Christians who lived in the UAE. Okay, they're free to have their life. This is not what we were told. We started getting into long debates about personal identity, religious identity, national identity. And I was just not expecting this level of sophistication and individualistic thinking and progressive thinking in the middle of the Arab world. And I said, if this is what's really taking place around the Arab world, and I think the Gulf, because it's kind of like a cosmopolitan area where everyone comes together, maybe is like a bellwether of bigger trends to come in the region, we have a true hope here for something much bigger. And you know, the Abraham Accords, which we'll now get into in this next segment, if that opened the doors for these kinds of engagements, how do we take these engagements and make them accessible to more and more and more people? Certainly in Israel, but really around the region. And so that's kind of what we set out to do with our platform. Is everyone here familiar with the Abraham Accords and kind of the political developments around that? Is anyone not familiar? Okay, I figured this is a pretty worldly crowd here. One of the things, you know, I'll ask maybe Ahmed to jump in, and then I'll give a follow-up question to my friends here. One of the things we often hear and often get on our international speaking tours is that the Abraham Accords were maybe a White House PR stunt. Keep in mind it was concocted during the Trump administration, which, whether you like that administration or not, was very polarized and politicized. Netanyahu was also a very polarizing figure in world politics. The Gulf monarchies, which are also can be polarizing, again, in international politics. So is an elites deal, an arms deal, a PR stunt. It's not real, right? Can you talk about a little bit about the behind the scenes of what brought about the Abraham Accords and relate to these kinds of skepticisms and
Sure.
critiques?
I was working on a research basically just to get on the roots of how it happened and where it happened. In the Bahraini media, it started talking about it about 25 years ago with the first delegation of FIFA, I think, entering Bahrain. I remember there were demonstrations on the street saying, why are we letting the Zionists coming into town? But it was small. And that basically started happening in bits and pieces. 3 years later, there was an international event in Dubai, I remember, including the flag of the State of Israel, not an Israeli participant even. And there was a big debate on that. So it started gradually. In 2006, our king met with the Jews who left Bahrain. Of course, Bahrain hosts the only indigenous Jewish population in the Gulf. Today, they are left with 27 only. Most of them left in 48 and then until 71. But still, they're there. We, as Bahrainis, grew up not having a problem or finding it odd that we have Jewish people with a synagogue that has not required to have some form of security. It's not needed. It's just there and people are coexisting. In 2006, the king met with the people or the children of the people who left Bahrain, gave them their citizenship back, what was taken from them was given back as well, be it land, be it money, an apology. Everybody in Bahrain found that to be owed. But I mean, when the Accords happened, we found out it was just another step into the process of making it happen. So it did not happen overnight. Despite the fact that people still talk about Trump made it happen, Netanyahu forced it to happen, and it won't last. On the ground, it is. Maybe not in a way that people are seeing it to themselves, on the streets where people are coming back and forth. Although, for the first time ever, a few months ago with Rabbi Shlomo, the whole of Bahrain was talking about this Orthodox Jewish man walking with 6 of his children on the streets. Yes, they were a bit complaining and skeptical, but nothing bad happened to him. Actually, people were shaking his hands and asking him, how is he doing? It's happening, it's a start, and we're seeing the fruits of it, and we'll see more of it soon.
Can you talk about the Moroccan context is a little different?
Yeah, certainly it's very different, especially the fact that it's rooted to the history of Morocco itself. And as I said earlier, is the fact that the presence of the Jews, it goes back to 2,000 years before, and we have it shaped the culture of Morocco itself, in a sense that the food culture, they got mixed up with the indigenous people of Morocco that are the Amazigh, the Berbers back then. And the cool things about the Berbers is that the fact they mix it up with everyone. They have this Mediterranean culture, in the sense that they don't kick anyone, and they're like, yeah, please come, let's work together, things like that. And I think they've done a lot of trade and commerce from the Jews that they entered to Morocco. So it gives us this generation of Jewish Amazigh people in Morocco. And since then they will live in, they will get out and they go back and things like that. I think that the last immigration, was it from Europe, the last one? I don't get that history that clear that much, but the idea is the fact that Morocco was always the symbol of peace between Islam and Judaism, in a sense, because I would thank a lot the kingdom itself, the kings, that they first of all they protected the Jews back in the Second War, in the regime of Vichy, where Hitler were asked to give him all the list of Jews that run away, and then he was like, we have none here in Morocco, and he was lucky enough, the king Mohammed V, because 15 days after that it was like the involvement of the United States and the Second War. So it was a stand from him, but it worked. Like after that, it was this initiative from Hassan II who reunited like Shimon Peres and Yasser Arafat in the 90s. So, and here you can see how much the Jewish community is so important to Moroccans. And it's not just about the history, but also it's about the culture. It's about also the integrity of Morocco. Like Morocco right now in the constitution, it's the only Arab country that has Jewish in it, like as a part of its global identity. So basically it's very different. And that's why a lot of people, they ask, why then it's in the Abraham Accords? Like if you have this privilege relation, it used to be secret before, then why the Abraham Accords? I think the Abraham Accords, it's it's first is better together. That's one. Like we cannot just say that we are still Arab, we are still Muslims together, and I think we need to team up, like to fight the dogma and things like that. But also, it's the first time that it's an official relationship, like meaning that it's a free air trade and people, they can come and go, things like that, and also it's the fact that we are not the only stakeholders here. So meaning that right now Morocco doesn't have only Israel, but it has other allies. Like we tend to think that it's only Israel and the others, but I see it as maybe it's Morocco and Bahrain, maybe Morocco and UAE, like through this Abraham Accord. So it's not just Israel, but Morocco and USA, for instance. And of course, it gets a lot of strength after signing those accords. You can see the weight, the geopolitical weight of Morocco right now, facing Spain, facing France, and things like that. And I think it was very smart to be among this Abraham Accords and to take part of it, because it tells like the story that it's whether we have a history of Israel or not. This is something that we should do, and it needed to do like years ago. So different, but same.
Yeah, I'll share from my point of view. The Gulf countries on one side of the region, and Morocco literally on the other side of the region, the MENA region, Middle East and North Africa, are the most physically distant from Israel, which is, the Levant is at the center. And which means also as far as the conflicts go are also the same. These are also, I think from a Middle Eastern perspective, also the most pragmatic societies, the most pluralistic societies in the region. So I don't think it's an accident that these were the first to kind of jump in and maybe open up the normalization. But we have to take into account all of the geopolitical and societal and trade, and of course the US connection here, which is something that is really worthwhile to dwell on, in that it took American leadership, and say what you will about the Trump administration, and I'm not getting into American politics at all here, but it was definitely one that was willing to think outside the box on this, and say that every single president since 1948 has tried in one way or another to solve the Middle Eastern conflict. And we all know how those have worked out. They all follow the same script. And here you have three Arab countries, backed by, I think, more Arab countries who agreed, or were just not willing to say out loud, that we have to try a new way to solve issues in the Middle East, that script has not worked, that maybe we can't solve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict first, maybe we should warm relations and have pragmatic, working, functional diplomatic relations with the region, let alone that these countries realize they also need Israel and its against the common threat of Iran and regional radicalism and proxies, against the common threats of food security and water security and job creation and technology. And the one big hurdle is public opinion. How do you, right? So Ahmed talked about kind of the baby steps that it took to warm to public opinion. I think the US involvement here, if we look at what did the US offer as far as political capital? It offered the Gulf countries supposedly much warmer relations in Washington. There were promises of advanced arms deals. We can't ignore those kind of things to the UAE. It offered Morocco recognition of its claims over Western Sahara. It offered Sudan, which we haven't talked about. Hopefully in our next speaking tour we'll have Sudani members also. We're working on it. Taking Sudan off the State Department terror list and granting Sudan a few $billion in international aid. So there is the American component, there's all the other things, and then how do you get over that hurdle? By slowly building public sentiment. And I think, from where the region is moving to, especially with this younger generation, that people have greater access to different areas of information rather than just state television or just Al Jazeera, is people can now form their own opinions, people can access, they're more willing to take chances and think in new ways. And so it took, leaderships in the Abraham Accords countries who were willing to take that step. Did we see, what kind of public backlash did we see in the Gulf or in Morocco or even in other Arab countries? Did we see public backlash against the signing of the accords?
It was very minimal, and it happened only in Bahrain, actually. In the UAE, it was 100% positive, and even more than 100%. In Morocco, I'm not sure how it was.
Did you have public backlash against this?
Well, okay, there is a different story here because it was an initiative that was taken by the king himself.
Of course.
So it's very hard to just go out and no. But in the same time, when you go on online, this is when you see the reality.
Yes.
Like people, they're like, we want that.
Oh.
This is the country. Like we want that. Like we were waiting for
So
that.
no backlash.
I want to be very factual. I think there were some people that they don't agree with that. Otherwise, why we are here?
Small
Yeah.
scale.
You lost your business partner.
Of course, yeah. Also, that was one of the funny stories. Like when I came back from Tel Aviv, my co-founder, who was like the CTO, were developing an API for a platform that links designers with marketing departments, and he quit, and he was like, I cannot bear with the fact that you can somehow look for an investor in Israel, something like that, and you are dealing with the enemy. And then he dropped it and he went. And it's one of the funny stories that even the educated people, the engineers, the doctors, they might have false idea about what Israel is, and they are even if they have this critical mind, but if you don't go there and see the people there, that it's really hard for you to imagine how the story is. So that's why part of our responsibility is that we work a lot on delegations.
Yeah, but back on the point, basically, the only place in that case would be Bahrain, with the slight backlash. There were small demonstrations. Back in the late, until 2010, prior to the Arab Spring, there were heavy demonstrations against Israel, especially when it comes to the last Friday of every Ramadan. It was announced by the Imam Khomeini of Iran that it's announced to be Al-Aqsa Day or Al-Quds Day. So we used to see some people around the numbers of 15,000 maybe sometimes, just demonstrating, and then they feel that they did something and go back home. But with the Accords, we're talking about a maximum number per demonstration of 80 to 60 people. Sorry, 60 to 80 people. Maximum, I'm going to say 100. I went to see some of those just to see with my own eyes. But that's it. It was during the visit of the foreign minister, Lapid, to Bahrain, for example, and there were 50 people. That's it, nothing more. But there is some kind of a refusal. When the ambassador in Bahrain asked, what is that about? They said, the official response was, this is a democracy. People are allowed to cast their opinion, of course, without harming anybody, without doing anything wrong, but that's it. It's minimal compared to what was before.
We follow public polling on this. I know the Washington Institute does regular public opinion polls around the region, also on this issue. And we know, in the Gulf countries, and I'll include the countries that are not involved and Saudi Arabia, support for this ranges between 25 to 40%. So it's not even, it's a significant minority, but it's not a majority who support these. And yet I think it's no secret that these are for the most part, well-respected monarchies in their own countries. Each monarchy is respected by its people, and Morocco also is a popular monarchy. And I think it's no accident that that's where you saw that these accords with people in the UAE also. We saw 0 demonstrations, but it's because people really trust their leadership to say, okay, they decide it's a good idea, it's a good idea. Fatima, can you, before we kind of maybe open up to questions, do you want to just briefly explain how we're structured and what it is we do?
Sorry to cut you off. Just
Yeah.
to let you know, I do know it is 5 o'clock. We did start a little bit late, so I do apologize. Want to thank you all for your time. If anyone has to go, you can feel free to go if you don't mind. We'd love to give this run for a little 10, 15 more minutes if possible.
And if it's cool, we'd love a group shot maybe at the end.
Yeah.
Is that all right? All right.
Thank you all. Please proceed.
So our organization was established by leaders from all of the Abrahamic Accord countries. It all started with us knowing the other. We didn't know much about the Israelis. The Israelis didn't know much about us in Bahrain or UAE, maybe Morocco less, but Bahrain and UAE. We started with delegation, like a culture exchange experience to take people. The first delegation was from UAE and Bahrain to Israel, and then it started from Israel to UAE, and now we had one actually just 2 weeks ago from Israel to Bahrain. It all started with this delegation, but then we wanted to do more for our region. We celebrated each other holidays because we thought through holidays, through food, we will know much more about each other. We had back in December a celebration of Bahrain National Day with Hanukkah, where we explained about the holiday and we celebrated both holidays together. We had once Ramadan iftar with Lag Bo'emer, Jewish holiday. I have a difficulty in the Jewish holidays names, but yeah, we're learning. And we have different holidays celebrating together. We had the tolerance through Holocaust education program, where we brought people from different countries in the Middle East, not only from UAE and Bahrain and Morocco. We had people from Saudi Arabia, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Pakistan, Algeria, going to Israel and Poland to learn more about the Holocaust, to combat anti-Semitism, combat extremism. We do lots of programs. We come to the U.S. And speaking tours, different parts of the U.S. to spread the message, to let more people know about what's happening in the Middle East.
And we're always kind of a startup platform, so always looking for the next idea.
Yeah.
We're now shopping around 2 new ideas. One is connecting young, promising tech programmers to the Israeli startup ecosystem. So to train them and then possibly get them offshore jobs in the Israeli tech community, and we're working with a platform in Israel that focuses on that. And kind of our new idea that we're shopping around is, we're going to have a teacher exchange program with a community here in the US that's going to bring together Jewish and non-Jewish teachers, Moroccans, and with a community in Israel, and they're going to share and compare best practices on how to teach tolerance and coexistence. And we have another one that's kind of, the general idea is how do we create kind of like a Peace Corps idea, but with members from all the different countries coming together to do goodwill projects around the world. And we're always shopping around new ideas and looking for funding for new ideas because we're a nonprofit. Yeah, and we're based simultaneously right now with offices in Bahrain, in Morocco, and in Israel. So that's it for now. We're happy to take questions about us, about the region, about anything.
So I'll start it off, if I may. Fernando Hernandez, I think, when I think of, the region, I think you mentioned the key word, monolithic religions. It's the place of three religions, right?
At least.
At least, right, at a minimum, that have a world, that are pronounced. I was just in Bethlehem, also was at the Western Wall, and then also got to see, the mosque as well. And it's a beautiful region from that perspective, of course. And you also touched on the Palestinian component, so just want to, if you can elaborate further on that component, it'd be great, because I think it touches many facets.
Look, there's a conflict between Israelis and Palestinians. It's a real estate conflict, but it's deeper. It's a deeper conflict of belonging and legitimacy. I don't want to get into who's right, who's wrong. I'm Israeli, they're wrong, they'll say I'm wrong, whatever. My friends here have a much more neutral take. I think what we're trying to do is get away from this binary thinking that swept the region. Unfortunately, it swept a lot of Americans. You have to be pro-Israel, you have to be pro-Palestine. And if you're pro-Palestine, you have to be anti-Israel. And if you're pro-Israel, you have to be anti-Palestine. It's not solving the issue. So even if I'm the most hardcore Palestinian activist, forcing the region or the international community to boycott Israel and not have ties with Israel, has that helped your cause? If you're a Palestinian activist? No. Has it solved the conflict? No. I think it's only made it worse. It's only polarized, it's only made people see each other as enemies. It's made a situation in which, like I said earlier, if you're Egyptian or Jordanian or even Bahraini or Moroccan, you can't talk to Israelis. Okay, it hasn't helped anything on the ground. In fact, it's only hindered those who are trying to do goodwill projects, those who are trying to do economic coexistence projects, and people who are trying to coexist on a day-to-day basis. So what the Abraham Accords did is they flipped the script. Okay, we're not solving that issue, so why are we letting the rest of the region get held up by that issue? Okay, food security is not going to be solved with or without that issue. The Sunni Shiite conflicts around the region have nothing to do with that issue. The water crisis has nothing to do with that issue. If anything, I think it's going to be helpful if the Bahrainis and the Emiratis, the Moroccans, and hopefully soon the Saudis and others have a seat at the table, and they're willing to be, to talk to the Israelis and the Palestinians. I think that's a good thing. I think it's a moderating conflict when all the region is positively invested, talking to both sides of the conflict. We do have Palestinian friends in Sharaka. Very few of them are willing to be vocal about it. They're scared in their own societies. We have many Arab Israelis who are Palestinian by origin, but they're Israeli citizens. We have many who are very proud to be engaged in what we're doing. We took a whole delegation of them to Bahrain 2 weeks ago. On the ground, things look very different. But kind of the general point of the Abraham Accords, I think, is everyone's been trying the same script for 7 years. It hasn't worked. Let's try a new one. Let's be pragmatic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Could you expand on the cultural implications of like just the deep-seated conflict? So I think in the U.S.-centric mind, you have a chamber of commerce in another country, and you just have disagreements, but you resolve them. But I come from a Latin American background where we've gone to war over soccer games, so it didn't last long. But could you expand on why those things keep you from growing and becoming a region of economic superpower? We see the Russian-Ukraine conflict and how much wasted money goes towards destruction. None of it towards giving people jobs, and solving inflation issues and things like that.
You want to jump in, Ahmed, or you?
I'm trying to process.
Yeah.
Sorry.
While he's processing, this goes well beyond Israel. Well, it's a region prone to conflicts. I think it's a mentality of the region. I think there's a modern history of upheavals and political extremism. I hope it's going away. My sense is that it's evolving. If you think it's only about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which for everyone always focused and called it the Arab-Israeli conflict, no, there's literally 100 conflicts happening around the region at the same time. 99 of them have nothing to do with Israel, right? We at our last event we met a Lebanese woman, and someone started talking. I said, Hezbollah that was in Syria during the Syrian civil war, killing Syrian Sunni Muslims, had nothing to do with Israel. She was like, yeah, you're right, it had nothing to do with Israel, right? I think it's a region right now that's prone to it. If you go back, again, just 100 years in Europe, every European country was in conflict with each other. I hope we're getting past that. There is something of the Middle Eastern mentality of I'm right, you're wrong. You see that today in Israel also. You see it everywhere in the region. But I hope we're on a process to mature beyond that. But
I hope so. Let's look at it that way. I mean, you went through a war because of a soccer game. We went through a war, I think it was 100-something years back in the day, over a camel. I mean, Hundreds and hundreds of people died over a camel.
Could the camel play soccer?
We could make it talk.
If you've never seen a camel race, by the way, in the Gulf, it's fascinating.
Let's look at it that way. I mean, I'll combine both of what you said into one. Hamas, for example, until 11 years ago, was financed mainly by the Gulf states. The day they were held accountable, I remember Mahmoud Abbas was in Bahrain. He attended a session of the parliament, and I was there, and they started talking. They started to put reason into it, saying that, fine, can we have a manifest of how he spent the last transfer we did? What did he do with it? And he got angry. What do you mean? We spent it for the cause and this and that. The moment he felt there's a distance between them and the Gulf, he ran to Iran. Oh, that rhymes. He started getting financed by Iran, our arch enemy, and Bahrain especially. What does that tell you? That these are not friends. These are friends as long as they are getting paid. And they don't have a problem getting paid by somebody else. That made a big disconnection between the armed groups in Palestine and the Gulf. Now, when we signed the accords, the same people said, why did you sign with them? They are the enemy. Yeah, but you just slept with our enemy on the same king-size bed. What do you want from us? That enemy, and I'm talking about Iran, is claiming Bahrain as its 14th state. So we're talking here about sovereignty. So what are we helping you achieve here? Nobody knows. That's one narrative of the story. The second, flip side. As Dan said, I'm not here to say that those people are good or those people are bad. We'll just go back in history and see what happened. When the Jordanians ran to help the Palestinians and they were fighting, what did Yasser Arafat do in Amman? He staged a coup. He wanted to take over from the people who were helping him at the same time. When Saddam Hussein took over Kuwait, the Palestinians in Kuwait who were given citizenship, lands, houses, jobs, took to the streets supporting Saddam, asking him to take the rest of the Gulf. What are we talking about here? Who's the friend and who's the foe? What do you want? What do we want? It's like couples therapy, kind of in a demented way. If we take emotions out of it and put it on plain paper, what did we do for you? What did you do for us? What do you want from us? What do we want from you? Easy, right? You'll go crazy. Trust me, I did that. I'm not into the whole Israeli-Palestinian thing until I joined Sharaka. I started to learn more about it. And the more I learn about it, the more I get crazier. Today, let's just put it plain and simple. Today, we mark this year the 75th birthday of Israel. If you view it from the Israeli side, it's a happy day. You view it from the Palestinian side, it's a sad day. It's a Nakba day, right? So what do we do now? We look at it from this perspective or this perspective. What do they want now? In Israel, I've seen it. Nobody told me. They said, fine, it's a free country. You want to join, you can live, you can do. Who was the contractor who did your carpentry lately?
Oh, Palestinian guy.
See? So they are welcome to come. They are welcome to work. Of course, if they adhere to the rules and regulations and laws. While on the other side, we're talking about the West Bank, we're talking about Gaza. No infrastructure, despite the trillions of dollars the Gulf paid. No understanding of what they want. And secretly, people would tell us, as Arabs, secretly, off the record, the youth especially, we rather have a one-state solution. And I was like, what? I said, yeah, with those guys, our guys, it's all corrupt. With Israel, I would rather live as a second or third class citizen, but I know what's mine and what's not. That's where we got into. So what about the freedom? He said, We don't have freedom with those guys. I'd rather be captured by Israeli police because I will have more rights in their prison rather than living on the streets here as a full-fledged citizen. So back to the whole thing again. I know I scattered it around and went broad. There's no easy solution here without somebody standing up saying, you know what, I screwed up here. Let's go back, let's see what we want. Realistically speaking, nobody can take off Israel. Let's put it that way. Nobody can wipe off the Jewish state or the Jews today. Nobody can wipe out even the Palestinians. So coexistence is the only way forward. How? It's not my thing to say. You guys are adults. Sit down on the table, have a meal, as we always say, and then take it from there. I'm not
cook though.
You'll be cooking. I'll be eating.
I just want to tell you something about that. I just reminded, you know, in the history of Morocco, we had like a coup d'etat twice against the king, and afterwards things were a little bit very like there was a huge tension in Morocco after that, and there was some people that they were jailed, and people that they went to prison for no reasons, and people that they got what, you know, they got unfair, you know, treatment and things like that after that. And it took us like quite more than 25 years. Like we've done a lot of things to process what happened in those black years. We call them the what's I know it in French, the
Say it in French.
the bullet, yeah, the bullet years, the bullet years or something like that, in back in the history of Morocco, and it took us like years and years to process it. And after that, you know, something beautiful happened, which is like we created a committee after that, and we brought all the families that they had this injustice, things like that, and they were like, can you please speak about it first, and what happened? And people, they will start crying in the TV, national TV. We have those settings, and people, they were crying and talking about that and that and that and that, and this is how we got a society that is put, in a sense that we didn't solve it who is right and who is wrong. Like I love this saying, there's like gray people, they are not welcomed in a black and white party. And I think the political solution will always get that polarized and forget this, what's the point? If it's love and peace and things like that, it's not political. It's human. And in order to be human, we need to do initiatives. And those kind of initiatives that they were organized in our kingdom, such like that, of course it was a mistake. But is it that just to say just I'm sorry and that's it? No. It took us years to swallow it first, what happened. And then after that, people, they were compensated by money, by things. They were like, we are sorry for what happened. It was in a very particular context and things like that. And after that, people, they got their trust. We had the social contract between the Moroccans and the king and things like that. It got somehow revived by what happened. And this is how I feel, the way I am as a young generation right now, is the fact that we are very eclectic. We refuse to be polarized. Meaning that I'm not gonna say that I'm gonna go with this and this. No, we know. Like even in our religion, we are not this old school religious. If we are Muslim or Christian, like we choose what we want to believe in. Individualism, exactly. In a sense that I am a Muslim, but I refuse to do some specific things just because of the dogma, for instance. I believe that, but no, I prefer to have it. That's why everyone became such as how can I say that? Like very different, and people. Well, I'm not trying to invade any religion here, but it's just the fact that my critical taken way before anything else. So basically, that's what I root for, in a sense that no polarization, just common sense and critical thinking, and I refuse to say that. I refuse to say it black and white. It's a lot of colors in a way.
So it's like a really good segue to my question. So I was gonna basically ask, what can we do in the U.S. to help you guys, like to help the Sharaka? organization, actually educate more US citizens in how can they remove the bias? Because that's a huge problem, because a lot of our, I would call it the forgotten generation, removes the bias, actually. We can see both sides and see the middle ground, do a lot of things, even in the political space. But the younger generation does not. They're very extreme. The older generation, super, I would say, extreme as well. And maybe I'm being biased right now just by who I've been around. But, what can we do, whether it's through social media or like webinars, or, maybe we in the young professionals group, maybe we need to go travel to Israel and like really experience it ourselves. But what can we do to help?
Yeah, I mean, first, use your own platform and your own positions of influence to seek out a better understanding of complex issues, polarizing issues, whether it's this, in our case, or other issues, and help be voices of moderation and nuance in your surroundings. We're always happy to travel anywhere and speak. We're happy to get on, webinars and speak. And it's a much bigger group than this. We're 4 of the staffers, kind of the senior staff right now, but there's many more people. Especially on a webinar, we can bring 20 people from multiple different countries to share a different perspective of what's happening. That's from our aspect. What do you share on social media? Are you sharing polarizing things? Do you share, again, I don't think this is this kind of crowd here, but when there's a polarizing issue, what do you share? Do you share the news piece that made you angry? Okay, why are you sharing that piece? Is it a one-sided piece? You have to always check your own biases on an issue. Did you reach out to someone with an opposing viewpoint and try to understand their viewpoint and try to get a nuanced, learned view of the viewpoint that you think you disagree with? If you didn't, then why are you sharing an opinion on something? Okay, and that goes for anything, any social issue, legislative issue, Israeli-Palestinian conflict, soccer matches in Latin America, whatever. I think that's something that, as thought leaders, as responsible community leaders, or whatever positions we have, that's something we all have to do, and be willing to stand up to the critics from our own societies who will say, you're an idiot, you're naive, you don't know. I don't know how many times people have told me, oh, you and your Arab friends, they're just gonna betray you and stab you in the back the second it's convenient for them. Yeah. Okay? I get that a lot. My friends get much worse, online at least. Okay, but we have to stand up for that, be willing to be that voice of moderation. It's not a sexy voice. Everyone wants you to take a clear position on something.
Yeah.
I'll share something with you. We had, so as part of this is kind of our flagship program for 2023, it's delving right into Holocaust education in the Arab world. As Fatima mentioned, this is a topic that's either denied or minimized all over the Arab world. It's become politicized because of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. You can't talk about the Holocaust.
Even in the US, I feel like sometimes, like that's been kind of put on the back burner versus when I was like in high school. I mean, I learned about it, it was embedded. Yeah.
So, we had a group of 15 Arabs, highly educated, some of them in Europe, a few of them in Europe, most of them in the Middle East, and an Israeli minister who's controversial gave a speech, and it was very politicized, anti-peace, and they were demanding that we in Sharaka make a condemnation against this Israeli minister. Now, it doesn't matter that I, as Dan, or we as an organization, definitely don't support statements that are anti-peace, and it doesn't matter that I, as an individual, did not vote for this person and personally can't stand them. Doesn't matter. We are not going to get into a position here of having to say we reject and denounce this politician or that leader or this, okay? Because what you're doing is you're forcing people to choose sides. And then it makes it binary. And then it's us versus them. Okay? What my colleague tried to do, and he was one of my Jewish colleagues in the organization, what he tried to do was not defend, but give an explanation of what those comments were made in. And he was, it was like they gathered an army to tar and feather him. He's like, I'm not supporting it, I'm just explaining to you the context of where that position came from or where that statement was made. I think we just all need to take a step back sometimes on hot button issues. Wait to have an opinion. It's okay to wait to have an opinion on something. It doesn't mean you're a coward. It doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean, just take your time, have the conversation, do your homework, and then decide if you really need to have an opinion on some issue, and not just because societal pressure says, no, what's your opinion on this issue? Now, are you on this team or that team? Well, why? Why do I have to, let's look at the issue and not the teams, because that's how you get such polarization.
Dan, thank you so much. That was a wonderful send off, a call out, call to action for all of us. Thank you for that question. Hopefully that everyone here got to take something away from this. I definitely want to thank our distinguished guests for coming out here today and giving their time for us for today.